Turn with me to Matthew chapter 2. We'll read the first 12 verses, which is the story about how the Magi came to Jerusalem. But really our text is the first 6 verses. Matthew chapter 2 at verse 1. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child. And when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them until it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed from their own country, or for their own country, another way. Let's ask God's blessing on his word. Father, again, having read your holy and infallible word, and a word that is so familiar to so many of us, and yet, at the same time, Lord, there's power here. Lord, I pray that your Spirit would be in me and upon me, that you would be with my lips and you would bring forth your message, your word, and that you would open up hearts and that you would strengthen, encourage. And Lord, for those that do not yet know you as Lord and Savior, Father, we pray that their hearts would be opened, that they would come to the knowledge of the truth of your love that has been given to us in Christ. Father, there's no one that can preach the word in the way that can change a human heart. But you are the one who takes the word. Your Spirit takes that word. You are the one who writes it in hearts. And we pray, Lord, that you would be at work here this morning. All these things we ask in Jesus' name alone. Amen. Most of us love these stories and have heard them again and again, and many of you have heard them preached on many times during the year. But I think it's good when we come to Christmas time too to drill a little bit deeper, right? Because what does Christmas mean to you? What does the Christmas story mean to you? And I think that sometimes it gets lost, right? Because a lot of times in the church, we tend to be more like the world than we know. And a lot of people around the world love Christmas. They might be Muslim, they might be Jewish, they might be of any kind of different background, but there's a lot of people around the world that just love the Christmas season. And so it's good to remember that Christmas is more than just a warm fuzzy. It's not just about this nice, comfortable thing. Oh, Jesus came to earth and all men are blessed and good tidings to all men, etc. And we actually see that in our text. But I was looking around on the internet the other day, looking for how the world feels, and even in the United States, some of the things that are being said about Christmas. And I came across this article that was written in December of 2018 in GQ magazine. GQ magazine, of course, is a great magazine, Gentleman's Quarterly. You know, I had to stop reading them when they said you couldn't wear jeans and a t-shirt anymore. But no, So that magazine in December of 2018, and they do this for a reason, right? They want to provoke. But there was a Jewish lady that wrote an article in there about Christmas, and I want to quote a few things from that article. She said, "I like good cheer, but please don't wish me a Merry Christmas. It's wonderful if you celebrate it, but I don't. And I don't feel like explaining that to you. Christmas is still, at its core, and by design, about the birth of Christ. A point that seems bizarre to argue. Just look at all the nativity scenes. And we don't observe the holiday on just any day. December 25 has Christian significance. When I hear the name, I hear the Christ in it. To me, it is strange that many of its celebrants do not." And so she's a New Yorker. She had come from Russia originally, and she's Jewish. And so, at this time of the year, all these people are saying Merry Christmas because that's what you do. Whether you believe it on it or not, it doesn't matter. But I actually very much appreciated her comments. And I appreciated them because she sees something that a lot of people don't, and sometimes even in the church. She understands that Christ represents something. Now, she may not believe him right now, and she may not be against him, but you know what? She doesn't sit in the middle. She's not lukewarm. She knows that Jesus represents something important. And I'll tell you something, it's been on my mind. I read this text during our family devotions about a week ago in Amos chapter 7, verse 8. And the Lord said to me, "Amos, what do you see?" And I said, "A plumb line." Then the Lord said, "Behold, I am setting a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will not pass by them anymore. The high places of Isaac shall be desolate. The sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste. I will rise with a sword against the house of Jeroboam." Well, brothers and sisters, that's not the only place where a prophet talks about a plumb line. And for the longest time, I'll be honest, I never could understand exactly what they were saying. Because you know what a plumb line is, right? It's just a simple string with a weight on it. And what you can do with that string and that weight is you go up next to something that's built. You go up next to a wall, right? A house wall or anything. Masons, for example, bricklayers use them all the time, even to this day. It's a very simple tool, but it's super effective. You just hang that line, and you can see if your wall is straight. It's a standard of measurement. Jesus is the plumb line. He's the one that the Lord is going to set in the midst of his people. He's a plumb line. You know what that means? He's a standard. He's a standard by which all of us are measured. And we see that in Matthew chapter 2. In Matthew chapter 2, there's this baby. He's not talking yet, right? He's still wetting his diaper. You're not going to look in his eyes and he's going to give you some particular piece of wisdom. He is a baby. But already this baby is a standard by which people are being measured and by which people are being divided. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. That standard by which people are divided. Right? Because in the first few verses here, we see that there's these wise men. They're Gentiles. They're from 1,000 miles away. They're from Persia. They're from a pagan background. But yet somehow they have this knowledge and they have this desire to find he who is born to be king of the Jews. Excuse me. So they come all this way. They don't have the knowledge that the Jewish people do. They don't have all the Old Testament scriptures. Now, they're no dummies. Right? If you actually go into the book of Daniel, you'll find that both under Nebuchadnezzar and later on under Darius, that Daniel was named to be chief of the Magi. Okay? So if you're wondering where the Magi got their information, it was probably written down hundreds of years before with Daniel's other prophecies that somehow they retained copies of. Right? So they had knowledge of some of the Old Testament scriptures and prophecies concerning Christ, including Daniel's. And by the way, Daniel's prophecies, brothers and sisters, actually set a time. They actually set a time, right? There's the whole prophecy of the weeks and how many weeks, and it comes out to a period of about 490 years from the time of Daniel. And that brings you right up to the time of Christ. And the Jewish people knew that. They knew he was about to come. So when these people come, these men come, and in their own nation, they're upper class. In their own nation, they are men of honor and they're of high position. They're not kings, but they are men of high position and of high honor. And you can see that by the fact that King Herod receives them, right? Kings like Herod don't just receive anybody that comes through, right? There's travelers coming through Israel every day, tons of them, even back in those days, because it's right on the main trade routes. So there's visitors all the time. Herod doesn't say, come on in to everybody. No, these guys, they matter. They're important. They're high and honorable people in their own nation, officials. So here they are, and they're like, where is he who has been born to be king of the Jews? Now, here you have King Herod. He's not a good man, and we're going to look at that more closely next week, Lord willing. But all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, and brothers and sisters, Jerusalem, you know, in the Christian church even today, like sometimes they'll call Grand Rapids Jerusalem, right? Because if you're Dutch Reformed, Jerusalem is Grand Rapids, right? Because that's the home of the Christian Reform, the Protestant Reform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? This is called Jerusalem. So there's around the different states, right? There's other churches like our churches, but this is the center. We call it Jerusalem. Why? Because Jerusalem's the high holy city. Jerusalem is Zion, right? The city of Zion. It's the city of God. It's the city of David. And for the Jewish people, more than anything, at the very heart of all of it, it's the city of the temple. There's only one place on earth where you can sacrifice unto God. There's only one place on earth that God chooses to dwell. And at the time that Jesus came, that was at the tabernacle, at the temple in Jerusalem. And so for any Jewish person that loves the scriptures and loves the law and loves the word of God, Jerusalem is the place to be. So the highest, most educated, the best scholars in the country, they would have all gravitated to Jerusalem. This is it. So they come, right? These men come, and they're standing in front of Herod, and they've got this question, where is he who has been born to be king of the Jews? And for them, there's just a certainty to this. He's already been born. The stars have proclaimed it. He's here. He's now. Where is he? We want to visit him. We want to worship. And look at what it says in verse 3. When Herod the king heard it, he was troubled. Now, he's got good reason to be troubled. Why? Because he's an earthly king that's full of himself. He's an earthly king that wants to leave an inheritance for his children, right? They're going to be kings. He wants to leave a good name, and he knows that this Messiah, there's no other kings. When Messiah comes, there's one king. He's the king. Right? So he's threatened by this, and rightfully so, because he's an ungodly and nasty little man. Okay? But then it says, and all Jerusalem with him. So all of Jerusalem is troubled. They're upset by this. You know how far Bethlehem is from Jerusalem? It's 6 miles. 6 miles. So here's the question. There's many things you could talk about and many things that people have talked about, rightfully so, out of this text. The thing that we want to answer today, or try to figure out today, is just one answer. Why? Why out of all of Jerusalem, when these men come and ask this question, and they give the answer, they know what the answer is. They don't even have to go, oh, King, we got to go back and study this. Where is he supposed to be born? They knew, because those guys, they had the Bible memorized. They had it memorized. They had all the prophecies memorized. Somebody just ripped it right out. One of those scribes just ripped it right out for King Herod when he asked that question. Where's the Christ to be born? And they just, from memory, Micah 5, verse 2. So here's the question. Why does not one of them go with them to see the Christ? You see, because they represent the church. They represent the righteous. They represent the ones closest to the temple. They love God. They love His law. They are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They are the people. The Christ is here. Why won't we go to Bethlehem with the wise men to see Him? It's 6 miles away. Right? You have the contrast that's working out of the text. You have the Magi who came from probably over 1,000 miles away. They traveled so far, they didn't know near as much as what the Jewish people did. And they gave everything. And then you have the Jewish people who knew so much and were so close and yet didn't go. And it makes me think that it must be that our congregations and churches around this country and around the world are filled with many people that are just like these people from Jerusalem. That every year Christmas comes around and we love the idea of having the holidays and putting up a tree or doing the decorations and doing the gifts, etc. And somewhere, oh yeah, let's talk about the reason for the season for a few minutes. But do we ourselves feel the fire? Do we ourselves find the need to go find the Christ child? Do we ourselves need to have that Christ child rekindled in our hearts? Why wouldn't they go? And the answer isn't given in our text, but the answer is given all through the Gospels. And so I'm going to attempt to just give a few short answers of why they didn't go. First of all, and probably the main reason, is that they were culturally arrogant. You know what that means? Culturally arrogant. It means they saw themselves as the people, the holy, the righteous, the elect. They are the elect of God, chosen by God, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those who have been circumcised from birth. Those who live next to the temple and worship in the temple every day. How do you think they would have received it? That all of a sudden there's some funny looking guys here from 1,000 miles away, funny clothes, funny language, and they're standing in front of your king, and they're saying, "Where is he who has been born to be King of the Jews?" They would know immediately who these people are talking about. They would know that they're talking about the Christ. Now, they're in the king's court, so they're going to give respect, they're going to give honor to these people to their face. But inside, they're seething with anger. They're seething with fury. Seriously? Are you kidding me? What does it mean to be a Jew? The Apostle Paul answers that question. He asks and answers that question at the very beginning of Romans chapter 3, because he's trying to show how the law doesn't just apply to the Jew, it also applies to the Gentile. And he asks that question, what does it mean to be a Jew? You know, or what is the benefit of being a Jew? That's what he says. That's the question he asks. And he goes, much in many ways, but chiefly that to them were given the oracles of God. Out of all the people of the world, and Moses says this, out of all the people of the world, God, the one King of Kings, the one God, the one Creator, chose a man, chose a family, chose a tribe, and chose a people, the Israelites. They are the people to whom God entrusted His oracles, His prophets, the word, the revelation of God came to them. So here they are, the holy and the righteous. And all of a sudden there's some people at the door saying, "Hey, the Christ has been born, where is He?" You know what they were thinking? Seriously, people? Don't you think that our Christ would be revealed to us first? That we would know about him? Right? That if there was if there was a sign and everything else that's been given and we would know that sign, we would be there already. If the true Christ had been born, we would already know. You guys, don't come in the door and you pagan Gentiles from 1,000 miles away and come and say that the Christ has been born. That's baloney. And we know this is true about them. Because all through the Gospels, it was manifest, right? That Jesus and his disciples were from Galilee. Jesus was raised in Nazareth up in Galilee. And what happens? How did they treat him? How did the Jews from Jerusalem treat them? Right? They looked down on him, didn't they? They looked down on him because it's just like in the old days, you know, when you come and sit down in church, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, so-and-so's here. The farmer. You know, because you can't ever get rid of that smell. It's like in your skin. You can shower and shower, but it just doesn't go away. I can smell them. Right? That's the way of the Galileans. Maybe they smell a little like fish. I don't know. But you know what? They recognized them. They saw them. And you know who they were? They were fellow Jews. And they weren't Samaritans. They didn't worship in a different way. They didn't have a different kind of gospel. They didn't have a kind of different scriptures. They worshiped exactly the same way as the Jews in Jerusalem did. They believed the same things. They were of the same blood. But because their accent was a little different, because they weren't quite as bright as we are, because they didn't live right in the shadow of the temple like we do, they looked down on them. And they despised them. And if they would do that to their own people who live 60 miles to the north, how do you think they would have received pagan Gentiles from 1,000 miles away that are standing there going, where is he who has been born to be King of the Jews? We've come to worship him. They would have said, no, it ain't true. It ain't happening. There's no way that God would reveal himself to you people and not us. And of course, along with that, brothers and sisters, along with that comes all the comforts of religion, right? Spiritual indifference motivated by pride. Spiritual laziness motivated by pride, right? We've got the truth. We know what the words are. We know all 613 commandments, precepts, statutes of the Old Testament law. That's how much they figured it out. It's 613, and I think there's another 626 prescriptions just that they made up concerning the Sabbath day. So there's 626 of those. There's 613 commandments, precepts, laws, statutes that come out of the law of Moses. They knew every one of them. They had just the right kind of colors in their robes. Their tassels were just right. Everything was just right. They knew God. And they knew his word backwards and forwards. So when now the Christ arrives, well, the word comes from a place that I don't recognize. These funny, goofy people from 1,000 miles away, these pagan Gentiles, sun worshipers, no, I don't think so. You know what? We're the righteous. We're the holy. Even if Christ has arrived, we can just wait here because he's going to come find us. Because we're the righteous. We're the tip of the spear. We're the ones that he will come to find first. We are going to be in the first rank. So you know what? I don't really need to go find Jesus. He's going to come to me because I'm one of the elect. I'm one of the chosen. I'm one of those who live in the shadow of the temple, and we do all of God's commands. Now, brothers and sisters, do you recognize any of this? You know, our congregations are changing, and we're changing, and I think in some ways those are very good things. Because I know that in my background, coming from the Dutch Reformed, conservative Dutch Reformed, that one of the things I found when I was quite young, and I enjoyed it, I had no problem with it, is that the better your doctrines are, and the better your theology is, and the more you know, and the better your doctors are, and we got the best confessions, and we got the best lineage, and the best fathers going all the way back to the Reformation. We despised less conservative Reformed. We despised the Wesleyans. Psst, they're out of here. The Baptist. Psst, of course, the Catholics. We despised them all. Because we've got all the right doctrines. We've got the best tradition. So if somebody comes around and they seem to act like they know Jesus, fine, that sounds great. Maybe you love Jesus. What did you say? You're Baptist? In my head, automatic. Well, he probably doesn't know him too good because he's a Baptist, etc. Aren't we the same way? Can we not get arrogant? Can we not get so full of the knowledge that we're already special and we go to the right church and we do the right things? Do I really need Jesus? 6 miles away. Brothers and sisters, they were 6 miles away. Come, thou long expected Jesus. 6 miles. Born to set thy people free. 6 miles away. O come, all ye faithful. Only 6 miles. Oh, come, let us adore him. 6 miles. 6 miles from salvation. 6 miles from forgiveness. 6 miles from the love of God made manifest. 6 miles from eternal life. Too far. Too far. He'll come find me. You know, if you don't have time to look for Jesus, then that means you're looking for yourself. You're looking for your own interests. And let me tell you something. If you go and you look for yourself and you will not look for Christ, you will not look for that child, you will find emptiness, bitterness, anger. But if you look for the Christ child, you will find him. And you'll find all that comes with him. I'd like to end with a story. There was a guy, died a while back, named Jeph Moody. He was a preacher. And he was having a Bible study at somebody's house. And he was calling upon them to prepare their hearts, to seek the Lord. The voice of Christ is burning in you. Don't just ignore it. Don't put it off because you're going to face Jesus. Jesus is at the end of the road for everybody, and sooner or later you're going to stand in front of him. The judgment is coming, but you need to prepare your heart to meet the Lord, for you do not know how short life is. And that doesn't matter who you are. You might be a child that's only 5 years old or 7 years old or 8 years old, and you're thinking, you know what, I got the rest of my life to talk about Jesus. I got the rest of my life to find Jesus. I got the rest of my life to look for the Christ child. But you don't know. Not one of us does. And when he got done with that Bible study, a woman came up to him and she said, I know exactly what you're saying. Her name was Rose Kennedy, and she was the mother of John F. Kennedy. And she told the man this story. She said, when I was a young bride, we were very wealthy, and she says, and I loved the power, and I loved the money, and I loved the lifestyle. And she said, and it was great. And I threw myself into it. And she said, a while after we got married, I had a baby. We had a baby, and I did the work. But we had a baby. It was a little girl, beautiful little girl. But shortly after she was born, we found out that she was severely mentally retarded, and she would need to be institutionalized for the rest of her life. And she goes, and it was hurt so much. And she goes, and then I got angry at God, and I was just filled with anger and bitterness and wrath. And she said, a couple months after this, she goes, my husband and I were supposed to go to a social gathering, and she said, I couldn't go. I told him, we can't go. I'm so upset. I'm so angry that if anybody asks me, how are you doing? Or how is your daughter? She says, I don't know what I'm going to say, and I don't know how I'm going to react. So they decided to stay home, and that's when one of her maids came to her and said, Mrs. Kennedy, I've been watching you for the last couple of months. And she said, you got to do something about all this wrath and this anger, this bitterness. She goes, because it's going to ruin you. And she said, I think you should pray this prayer. Lord, make my heart a place where the Christ child can be born. Now, to our ears, that sounds funny. We don't really think that way, and it's a Catholic family, and so they express things a little bit different. But you know what? That maid actually expressed a good word there. She was basically saying, Lord, give me a new heart. Because that's the only way anybody can ever have the Christ child come live in them, is that you have a new heart. Because our heart that we're born with, our sinful heart, will not accept him. We don't want him. So she said, pray this prayer. And of course, Rose did what any good, upstanding socialite would have done at that day. She fired her immediately on the spot. Get out of here. Merry Christmas. But of course, she went to bed that night and she could not sleep. She could not sleep, tossing and turning, probably looking in that mirror and saying, look at who I'm becoming. Look at the wretched, evil, nasty, bitter, evil little person that I'm becoming. And finally, by the grace of God, she got down out of her bed and she kneeled next to that bed and she said, Lord, make my heart a place where the Christ child can be born. And she told this preacher years later, she said, immediately my heart was flooded with a sense of love. Immediately I knew that God was with me. Immediately he told me and instructed me, and I knew that it was going to be okay. One way or the other, it was going to be okay. The next day, she hired her maid back, and that maid stayed with them until she died. Brothers and sisters, the Christ child is not 6 miles away right now. He's not 60 miles, 600 or 6,000 miles away. He's right here, right now. He's near unto every one of us. Listen to what Jesus told the Laodicean church, the lukewarm church, the church that was just kind of Behold, I stand at the door. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and dine with him and he with me. I will come in and dine with him and he with me. Ask yourself the question, is my heart a place where the Christ child can be born? Is my heart the place that even now, after so many years of hearing Christmas sermons, is my heart still excited about Christ? You see, to me, it all comes down to need. That plumb line runs square down the whole idea of need. Right? The proud, the arrogant, we don't need the baby. We don't need the Christ child. We don't need the crucified Christ. We don't need the resurrected Christ. He sounds like a nice guy. He's got some great ideas. And you know what? I wish I could live like him. But you know what? Life is good over here. I like it. Someday, maybe I'll come find him. Let me tell you something. Today is the day. Is your heart a place where the Christ child can be born? Is my heart a place where Christ can abide? Because if it is, let's open the door and dine with him. Amen.